All right, welcome to this week's episode. I am super excited to host my friend and fellow traveler, Nic Warner. We met about 4 or 5 years ago in the jungles. Well, not really the jungle. I guess it's more of the Sacred Valley of the Moon down in Peru. And I'm really excited to host him this week and share his work with the world and with this community. And Nic is a sacred intimacy mentor and a men's work, plant medicine, and breathwork facilitator. Since 2015, he has traveled the world, spending extended periods of time in jungles, ashrams, silence, and darkness, exploring his own healing path and seeking out various mentors, healers, and coaches. As well as studying and facilitating plant medicine and breath work, Nic has studied Tantra and sacred intimacy with some of the world's most renowned teachers like David Deida, Mantak Chia, Maananda Sarita, Danielle Odier, and Chris Bale. Using the tools that helped him rise out of the ashes, Nic holds workshops around the world and coaches both individuals and couples, supporting people on their healing journey to integrate and deepen their relationship with themselves and each other. So Nic, I want to say thank you for being on today. And it is really just a pleasure to get to host you and really get to share just in the spectrum of the last 5 years, how much growth and things that have shifted for you. So I'd love for you to share, a little bit more about you from your point of view and your story, and what got you to where you are today.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you for having me. And it's the first time in a very long time. My journey, it was about the start of 2016, I guess, and I was at the very beginning of 3.5 years of traveling, and going deep into this process of healing, really discovering how much pain I was in and how much pain I was carrying, and the life that I created was not the life that I wanted. And it was this extended period of really going deep into my own healing journey and starting to transform my life into something that I really am now quite fortunate to say a life that I absolutely love. So it began with living a life that society kind of suggested I should do, and my parents kind of suggested I should do. And I got married and worked in this career, and then at some point, due to a lack of purpose, I got into drugs and I got into these other things and addictions and became deeply unhappy. And it was kind of planting the seeds of destruction within my marriage. And eventually my partner had an affair, and it broke me open to the point where I took the time off to travel and to really go inwards. And I started to learn that fear is our compass, and the things that scare us the most are the things that we need to do, and the direction that we need to head. So I looked at all the things in my life that I felt were broken in a way, or misaligned, and I started to really get into that. And I spent a lot of time in meditation, a lot of time with plant medicine, and then eventually got into sexual energy and intimacy. And then with all of that, I started to get into men's work, and suddenly everything started to make sense and everything came together. And it led me to where I am now and to what I do today.
Absolutely. And it's such a powerful story because I feel like where I met you along that in that space was shortly after when I don't remember if you had just started your traveling or if you were a little bit further in, but I distinctly remember the pain that you were working through. And I think that's such a big piece for men, that being vulnerable enough to talk about the hard feelings and when your heart's broken and crying, and or um, being able to show those things without it meaning you're weak or that something's wrong with you. And I'd love for you to share your experience of that learning curve, because that was my experience of in meeting you, of just seeing you go, like being in that part of your process, and then seeing you now and that really that alchemizing that you did within your own emotional world. Because I really think that's such a huge piece for men, that they've been taught that it's not okay to have emotions other than being strong and stoic and keeping your shit together, even at the cost of relationships and their own happiness. So if you could speak to that, I would love to hear.
Yeah, for me, it was, I mean, we get told as men that the less emotional we are, the better. So we don't understand how to deal with our emotions. So we lock them in, we trap them down until eventually they break out in ways that we perhaps don't want them to. And I knew that I was carrying a lot of pain, and I had no problem crying, but I knew that I had like generations of pain that I had to get rid of, and it was creating issues in my life that I didn't really understand at that time. So this is it's one of the more beautiful things that when I work with men, I have a lot of men come to me and they haven't cried in like 10 or 15 years. And it's almost like it's become such a condition for them that they just don't know how and they can't. So I think I was 3 or 4 months into my first trip when I met you, and I'd already drunk ayahuasca for the first time, and that was what really broke me open. And it was almost like it ripped off this infested Band-Aid and everything just started to flood out. And I remember back then I couldn't tell my story without crying. I couldn't speak about what I went through without breaking down. And that's why I knew that I had so much to do and I had such a difficult journey to go on. But in the end, it's a necessary journey that we all need to undertake. It's one of going inwards rather than trying to, which is in my experience what a lot of men do, is they money and success and jobs and women and whatever. And the only true healing comes when you go inward.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just powerful in general for all genders and people is the inner resourcing versus the outer grasping that is really ego based, and has caused a lot of problems as we see in society as well. And so over the course of you alchemizing your emotions and really working through those, did you have a specific coach or a practice or a way in which you really facilitated that with yourself, or was it just you feeling into it every day and letting yourself feel whatever was there? What was kind of your process around that?
To be honest, in the beginning, I had no idea. I had no idea about healing. I had no idea what it would look like. All I wanted to do was to spend 6 months doing meditation, yoga, and drawing, because they were the three things that made me happy. And by dedicating 6 months of my life to just doing the things that made me happy, that was my initial goal. That was I really had absolutely no clue what was going to happen. I was just like, fuck it, I'm going for 6 months, and whatever happens after doing that, then I'll decide. And by doing the things that you love the most, you start to raise your frequency. And as you raise your frequency, synchronicities start to come in, and suddenly the breadcrumbs of the universe are like, okay, now you do this, now you do this. And I was just guided. It was like divine guidance the whole time. And I would meet somebody that suggested to do something. The very first thing I did was go into a dark room, and I'd never heard of it. I didn't know what it was, and I didn't know why people would do it. And I heard some guy talk about it, and I was like, "You're fucking kidding yourself. Why would you spend so much time in a dark room?" And then I met somebody else talking about it, and then somebody else, and then I met a teacher, and he told me that I should do it. And then suddenly it just all lined up. And then I'm in Guatemala, and I spent 11 days in the dark. And I get out of there, and then somebody talks to me about Cambo, and I'd never heard of it. But suddenly I'm in Peru, and I've just met the teacher and the friend of this guy that was talking about it through sheer coincidence. And it just went like this the whole time, and meeting people who were talking about meditation retreats, and until I got to the point where I did an array of things, and I worked out the things that provided me the most amount of healing and the most release. And then I went back a few months later, and I just deep dived into those things. So I went into more jungle and more silence and more breath work. And when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And that was my case all the time.
Yeah. And what I'm really hearing too is almost that sense of going in and just the overall presence of just really being exactly where you're at in that moment, and allowing yourself to take those little nudges or those intuitions or the breadcrumbs that you met. And would you say that's also like a huge difference of when you were living in New York and in the like societal hamster wheel of looking at the things and going? And because that to me is like really where the biggest shift is for people, is that ability to slow the fuck down and really get in real time of now, versus like, if I do this thing, then I'll get this, or if I do this and that kind of spin out that we can get stuck in. So I think this is really powerful for any of the men listening, or even the women, to see a man and witness a man that is committed to their healing journey. And I think it's so powerful of really getting into allowing yourself the time and space to, whether it's a week or 6 months or a couple years, to focus on just doing the things that you love in the way that you did. I think that's a huge piece that people either think they don't have enough time for, or they are like, oh, I'll get to that when I retire. But that's such a huge piece of healing, is allowing yourself that time and space.
And this is something that it should be taught at school. It's honestly, it's one of the biggest issues that I see with men today, is they don't take that space to sit in silence or in solitude, because it's too uncomfortable. So there's a constant distraction. And oh no, I don't have time for it. Yeah, you do. You've got all the fucking time in the world. But it's what you prioritize. And there's so many men running around out of purpose that are depressed and are suicidal, and are just really, they hate their life. So they're addicted to drugs and alcohol and porn, and because they haven't taken the time to get out of their head, because it's too uncomfortable. And the direct way to find your purpose is to sit in solitude and in silence. And you sit there until all of the only thing that you want to do becomes clear. Because you can't think about your purpose doesn't come from the mind, it comes from deep in your heart. So if you are thinking about it, what is it I want to do? And then perhaps you come up with an idea, but then the mind is like, oh no, but that's a shit idea. Why don't you do this? And then the mind comes back and it's like, oh yeah, but that's fucking stupid because you can't make money doing that.
Yeah.
You're constantly going to outthink yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So by sitting in solitude and sitting in silence and allowing the mind to just be like, rah, until eventually it starts to quieten down, then the heart speaks. And then you're sitting there and you're like, fuck, the only thing I want to do when I get off this mountain or get out of this cave or whatever it is you're doing, the only thing I'm going to do is this. Because it's my deepest yearning is to do this one thing. And then suddenly that's your purpose. And maybe that purpose is for a year or a month or whatever, but that is your purpose. And that is what you need to be doing. But we don't allow ourselves this time. We don't allow ourselves the space to sit in the discomfort and to just dwell in our own kind of existence and see where we're at, and to just really allow ourselves to embrace the uncomfortable and to embrace the pain and to embrace the mind.
Yeah. And I've seen this a lot too, where especially in some of like the mainstream coaching industry, where it's like focus on feeling good and stay high vibe and like all this, and it's all kind of more up here chatter. And I don't necessarily think people need to, dwell in their pain in order to like understand the world or whatever. But it is this interesting aspect where we've been brainwashed and taught that to actually sit with and understand your own pain and to love on it and lean into it is a different situation and process than to be in victim mode or to think that you are your problems and that kind of a thing. So this is just so important, I think, for all people and especially men to understand that like not feeling okay or to having these demons that they're dancing with or whatever, and that is when they can step into that process and to learn about themselves in that way is so powerful.
Yeah, that whole good vibes only thing is as dangerous as somebody who just plays consistent victim mode, because you're telling somebody that they're not allowed to feel what they feel because they should feel something different.
Yeah.
And it's complete bullshit.
Yeah.
If you're in pain, it's uncomfortable. So most people want to avoid it.
Yeah.
They don't want to sit with it. So they distract themselves. And this is where we start to numb. And this is where we start to do things. Oh, I need to be happy because, there's a fucking sticker that says good vibes only. It's like, no. You need to work out why you're unhappy. You need to sit there and really feel. You can't think your way out of something. You need to feel your way through it. And by sitting in it and working out why it is there and where it comes from, then you can shift it by shining light on it rather than avoiding it. You can transmute that pain into pleasure and into love and into fucking things that just will shift your life. My entire existence now comes from my ability to sit with my pain. My entire existence before that came from avoiding my pain. So yeah, it's this whole love and light thing really, it's such a bypassing, misinformed and kind of immature way to look at things, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm curious too, because especially with your journey of um, having experience of being cheated on in marriage and now being in a polyamorous relationship, I would love to know more about how sitting with yourself and being in the emotional, feeling your way through it led you into Tantra, and kind of hearing more around your like communication around that, and how your mindset and ideals and values and beliefs have shifted around relationships in that way. Because I think it's really powerful, and it's something that's still maybe a little bit taboo for people, to talk about, well, sexuality in general, or tantra, and people like what people think tantra is, and polygamy and different things. So I would love to kind of tie in and move into how this inner work and the emotional journey led you into tantra, and how that looks for you in your relationships now.
Just to be clear, I'm in a monogamous relationship. Definitely not in a polyamorous relationship. I did a talk on Instagram the other day. I made a post on polyamory and this community of people that project their own wounding onto others. So in the spiritual communities, and especially in the tantra communities, you're not open if you're unwilling to be. You have wounding that you need to look at if you're unable to be polyamorous. But it works the other way as well. So there's a whole video on my Instagram of that. But basically my relationship with my wife fell apart because of my inability to be vulnerable. Every relationship I've ever had up until now fell apart because of my inability to be vulnerable. So this was my learning. So this is where suddenly, plus I was addicted to porn, and I had erectile problems and premature ejaculation, and I was a fucking mess in the bedroom. So in my path of healing that, I learned how to heal myself and how to overcome those issues. And then I was like, okay, so this is not a problem anymore, but I still can't tie down a relationship because I'm not physically intimate, sure, but emotionally intimate, I'm a fucking mess still. So then I went further into that and how we can open ourselves up despite the difficulty and despite the discomfort, how we can open ourselves up to more love, more pleasure. And I was back in Berlin at some point. A friend came to me and she said, I've just met this amazing guy and he's fantastic, but he can't last more than a minute in bed. Can you help him? And I was like, oh, yeah, probably. And then suddenly somebody else called me and they're like, oh, can you help me? Because I have this issue. I'm like, oh yeah. And then it started to kind of just come to me without me seeking it out. And the more it came to me, I suddenly found more teachers, and suddenly I was on this path of, we teach what we need to learn ourselves. And for me, it was how to master my sexuality or my sexual energy, and then how to deepen within myself, deepen my intimacy with myself, which would then allow me to be more intimate with others. And then this ties so much into men's work because we have such a difficult time being vulnerable with anybody. So if you can't open up to your woman, then she can't trust you. And if she can't trust you, she doesn't feel safe. So there are these men that are like, why don't I get, how can I have more sex? Or why is my relationship like this? And it's because your partner feels unsafe. Well, how do I make it feel safer? You need to open yourself up to the point where you become so vulnerable that you want to fucking crawl under a rock, because she can open up to you, but then as soon as she does, you shut down. And this is so common with men that it's the men's work and the intimacy just really ties in beautifully. So it's not like I chose this path. Like if you asked me 5 years ago, there's no fucking way I'd be doing what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful, and it just, more and more people are coming, and the path is really opening up, and it's a really beautiful journey that I'm on.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. And it's interesting too that erectile dysfunction and these different and the intimacy issues are so common just because of how our society is, especially Western society. There's so much pressure on men to perform and to and again to be in that stoic, like have their shit together, be the thing, and not have emotions and kind of go in that way. And I think it's so beautiful how you're tying in the emotional work and the deeper inner work with men getting to heal their relationship to their own sexuality, whether it's pre-ejaculation or erectile dysfunction or whatever the thing is, because instead of just giving them Viagra and telling them to go like do the thing, you're actually healing a root cause or root issue that they can then change and heal that relationship within themselves versus just giving them a pill or ecstasy or something so that society would just be like, oh, just fucking slap this on there and fix the thing. So I think that's so important. And for people in this group or anyone that's listening that aren't familiar with men's work, like when you say men's work, if you could elaborate and share what you mean by that and what that is and how you work with men, because I think some people don't know.
Okay. Yeah, men's work is basically creating a space for men to come together and to share, to open up, to break down, to break through, to really explore and express themselves as they need to in a safe container. So this looks like having men's circles where we gather and we sit around and we talk about emotions, and we talk about what's present for us, what challenges us. We talk about anything that generally men don't get to speak about with their friends. So growing up in Australia, if you have a problem and you want to speak to a friend, the response would generally come back, you'll be right, have a beer. And this causes, I think it's like 4 or 5 times more men kill themselves than women, because we're not allowed to express ourselves because we'll be seen as less masculine. And the most masculine thing you can do is to fucking express how you truly, deeply feel. But society teaches us not to do that.
Yeah.
And then suddenly society's like, oh, well, why aren't you a better partner? It's, well, because I can't handle my emotions because I was never taught. If I can't handle my own emotions, I can't handle my partner's emotions. So men's work is really, it's just about creating a space for men to heal. And through that, I did workshops, and I built a community here in Berlin, and everything from breath work and yoga and different things that get men to start to wake up and to start to come together as a conscious community. And it's a profound thing, and it's something that again just came to me at some point when I was in Peru. Actually, no, I was in India at this point, because I needed it so much for myself. I was so desperate for this type of work that I sought it out, and then once I witnessed the profound healing that came from that, I then came to Berlin and started it myself. Just to touch on what you were talking about before, with the erectile dysfunction and this kind of thing, it's a surface level problem.
Yeah.
It's like a side effect of a deeper issue. And a perfect example of this is I have a client that came to me and he's like, look, I fucking can't get hard. Like it doesn't matter what I do. I'm with a beautiful woman. I can't get hard. And there are all these little things. Okay, do you watch porn and how often do you ejaculate and blah, blah, blah. But the root cause of the issue is that this guy is unable to have a conversation with his mum because she left him when he was a teenager. So by digging through the surface level stuff, suddenly we're at the root cause of one of the biggest issues in this guy's life, which he's unable to face ever because it's too daunting, it's too uncomfortable. So now we're in this process of him getting the courage to sit with his mum and to have this difficult conversation, because then this will heal how he sees women. This will begin to heal his relationships, because the mother wound is so huge for so many people, and like people just, they're not aware of it. They treat, like they're in relationships and certain things happen and they don't know why they keep attracting the same people. They don't know why they're afraid of commitment. They don't know why they have this abandonment wound or where it comes from. So to have the opportunity to sit with a brother and to just be like, look, we can heal this, but what you need to do is deeper than that. And it's really a profound opportunity that I have to work with these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And that really is the work, is the inner healing, whether it is around, I think most things come from childhood trauma personally, but on some form or level, but for most people, they've had something happen along the way that is a catalyst. And, whether it's a divorce or a death of someone or abandonment from parents, like there is that thing that I refer to and I've heard it called core wounds, like the thing that shows up in this life that we have to work with, that to work on, to heal, that then becomes like part of our fabric. And I really like how you speak to, because I'm a big believer in healing happens in relationships. So it's like this interesting dynamic where we need that time for ourselves to be alone and to be with our own thoughts and our own emotions. But there's such profound healing that comes into sharing, like taking out the shame and the isolation of holding your own story and leaning it into like the work that you do with men and that space that you hold for them, to be able to share it with somebody and have them validate your feelings and really look at how this has caused different things throughout your life. It's so powerful. And I do similar work with women, in the inner parenting and really healing that relationship. So I just really want to highlight that, how powerful that work is. And it is profound because it's not mainstream. It's not something we're taught growing up, and it's really sacred space. It's really, it's just so important for people to have those communities, and whether it's a workshop or ongoing things, to be able to dive in and heal that stuff and really change their lives. So it's really important.
Yeah, I mean, most women I know can go to their girlfriends and can speak about their problems, and they can speak about the things that the issues that they have. And a lot of guys I know, the only person they can speak to about their stuff is their partner. And if their stuff is their partner, then they're kind of fucked.
Yeah.
And to have an outlet for guys to come and to even to be held accountable. The guy comes and he's like, oh, if she does this and she does this, and if she does this different, things will be better. And it's like, yeah, but where does this trigger come from? Her triggering you in this instance is your work. And if you're unable to see that because it's a blind spot, then you need somebody else to highlight that. Because if the partner highlights it, then you just get into this back and forth.
Yeah.
So one of the, I mean, I've never claimed to be a perfect partner or to have my shit figured out or to be a pro in relationships, and it's a constant learning. But we meet the people that we're ready to meet, and this relationship I'm in at the moment is profound on so many levels, because she holds a mirror to my face constantly and gets me to, I don't think I've ever felt so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's like, there are questions like, what is the most uncomfortable thing you could share with me in this moment? Like, fucking hell. So it's a constant digging up and a revealing of where we're at. And the thing about, I was just on the phone to a coach last night, and he's like, your woman needs you to be fully in your truth all the time. And if she has an issue that she can't see, perhaps if she carries a wound from a past relationship into this, it is your job as the man to take her hand and to guide her through this pain with her in full support through to the other side. Because if you have an issue, and this was not so much anymore, but this was a big thing for me. If I had an issue, I just wouldn't speak about it. I would just go into this avoidant role. And then the woman, because women feel fucking everything. And it's like, I know you feel this. I know there is something going on and you're not telling me. And the guy's like, oh, fucking nothing. And they pretend that it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But if the woman sees the man sticking his head in the sand and ignoring the issue, and she knows that there's the issue as well because she can feel it, then she can't trust him.
Yeah.
And if she can't trust him, then it's like, what's the fucking point?
Yeah.
So, yeah, being held accountable is the other thing of these men's circles, and especially in the relationship space, it's a really necessary and beautiful thing.
Yeah. And I love this work so much, and hearing you speak about it too, because there's so much emotional maturity that comes in, and spiritual, but really emotional maturity and intelligence that plays into this, that I really do feel like for a lot of mainstream people, they're just maybe not even ready to, most people aren't really ever feel ready. I don't think, to go into this work. It usually takes some type of catastrophe to happen for people to like be like, fuck, I need to fix this because I feel like shit, kind of a thing. But I think it's just so important to just in the dynamics of relationships going forward, in modern day society, where this work is available, and I love showcasing and sharing your work with my community, because it's so important for women to see men talking about this, men who are committed to this kind of relationship and work, because I think, there's a generalization that happens for a lot of women where they're just like, well, all the good men are taken, or, like whatever the rhetoric or the stories that people make up. And there is so much emotional maturity that comes into having healthy relationships. And people are so used to toxicity and family trauma, generations of dysfunction, and yeah, it's just really important work, and I can't say that enough. It's like, it's so important.
And I've actually, this has come up quite a bit in the last week, actually, is this question of, where are all the good men?
Yeah. Well, tell
Because
us,
I
Nic,
get
where
asked,
are they? I'm
they're
slightly
fucking
teasing.
everywhere.
I know. I know they are.
The thing is, and this can be triggering for women, you attract what you're ready for. And if you're attracting a wounded man that needs healing, it's because you haven't done the work on your masculine side, and you were too much in your masculine. if you haven't done the work to heal your father wound, this is often the case. If you aren't able to set a boundary of this is what I need in a relationship, and if you don't meet this energetically, then there's no fucking space. So women just, I'll try him out. Oh, but where are all the good men? Well, he wasn't one of them. But if you had this boundary, if you had this container and you were able to set the container for yourself of this is what I need and I'm not going to fucking budge. That's the energy that you start to put out. Once you start to put that energy out, people who don't match it will be repelled. Yeah. Or you'll be able to repel them. And then suddenly, when you get to the space of like, actually, you know what? I don't fucking need anybody. I would like someone, but I don't need anybody. Then the universe is like, oh, fucking meet whatever his name is.
The guy that's on the way.
But it's this, we all wish for the perfect partner. We all want the you could write a fucking list of what you want and what you desire. But until you're ready for that, they're just not going to turn up. So you're going to attract what you're ready for. And until you do the work on yourself that elevates you to the status of the partner that you want, you're going to be waiting a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. I could just go on for hours on this topic, and it's so important. I'm glad that you touched on it because, in my own healing experience around, I was abandoned by my father at a young age and had a lot of trauma in my childhood. And I kept attracting very, not like they're all lovely humans, but just the dynamics in the relationship was just echoed that. And it re-triggered those emotions for me. And it kept coming up until I finally was just like, fuck this. Like something has to change. So for anyone that's watching that resonates with that, I want to echo and full on support of what you're saying around doing your own inner work, because you attract in and call in what you're ready for. And when you don't have boundaries, or you don't know your own values or what you expect in relationships, you end up taking in and taking on similar situations that whether it was alcoholism, addiction, cheating, abandonment, emotional unavailability, and you think they're normal because you haven't had that break of pattern or relationship. So it's just so absolutely important for women and men to get really clear on where there is dysfunction, because I think anytime there is a problem or repeated cycles of behaviors or relationships, that's our trigger or that pinpoint for healing. That's like where we can access and drop in and do the work. So if somebody is watching this and they're like super caught up in their head around like, I keep attracting the same partners, it's like, and that's where you get to focus and really sit with yourself and drop into that. So it's so important.
Give for acknowledgement, because that's not going to get us the partner of our dreams. There's a really beautiful Ram Dass quote where he says, so somebody comes along and they trigger me, and I'm excited because that's my work on myself, because they don't fit the model of behavior that I think they should be. That's why I'm triggered. So if we can try and find the gold nugget in every single person that triggers us, underlying trigger that we get triggered, they're just being themselves. They're a fucking blessing because they're highlighting the work that we need to do. It can be our work is to be able to set boundaries. It can be that they trigger us to a point where we need to learn how to set a boundary. And okay, so you heard that bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so because often there's, a trigger is a reflection of ourselves. So the person is just mirroring back to you. So for instance, and the obvious example is, say you're driving down the road and somebody doesn't indicate and they cut you off and you get super triggered by it. Then 2 minutes later, you do exactly the same thing to somebody else. Like it's very common to get triggered by the things that you're not willing to look at in yourself. The other thing is somebody does something which is the opposite of what you would do. And perhaps it's because you don't allow yourself the freedom to express yourself how they express themselves. So that triggers you. But the other one is that sometimes somebody triggers you so much, all you have to do is set the boundary to just say, look, I don't need to experience this anymore. Because often we don't say anything out of fear of rejection. Mm-hmm. And we don't say anything because we don't want to upset someone. But in the end, it's like, if you're getting triggered, then you owe it to yourself to set a fucking boundary, if that's what it takes. And it doesn't mean set boundaries to every person that triggers you, because that's not doing the work either. That's just bypassing looking at your own shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's so important.
Triggers are amazing.
Yeah, I'm all about looking at the triggers, and it's not comfortable work, and it is it's definitely a commitment, right? It's like this commitment to self, and that's really what I see you working with men on, is for them to heal that relationship, and it's committing to making yourself a priority, where you're not going to make other people more comfortable than you are in a situation. Because that happens, I think, a lot more in women than men, but I can see where it happens for men in close partnership versus just like day-to-day life. But yeah, it's the setting boundaries is crucial for healthy relationships. Absolutely. And Nic, I mean, we could talk for hours about all of these things, and to kind of wrap it up, and I'd love for you to share how men can find your work, or if the women that are watching this are like, oh, my husband needs to work with this guy, or any of that kind of thing. What do you got going on? Where can people find you online? And let people know how they can get a hold of you.
No, so I have, I'm most active on Instagram, which is just Nic Warner. I have my website, which is nicwarner.com. We do a Zoom men's circle, which is on every second Monday. So for men from around the world, we have guys from all around Europe join that just for the time. The thing about it, the unfortunate thing about it is a lot of women come to me and say, my partner needs to come to your men's circles. My partner needs to do this kind of work. Unless he's wanting to, unless it's his idea, it's very difficult for it to happen.
Yeah. Thank you for
So
saying that.
if
Yes.
there's a way that you can plant a seed where it becomes his idea, then you have more chance of it coming to fruition. But to say, hey, you need to check out this guy and do this work, it's occasionally it works. Occasionally the guys are, oh yeah, actually this shit's interesting, because I try and make it, a lot of the stuff I post is directed at men, yet most of the followers are women, because that's what they're seeking. They're seeking this kind of information for their partners. But I work with couples and I work with men and women. So it's, it doesn't really matter if it's just the man or if the woman needs to get in touch as well.
Awesome.
Feel free.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you for saying that too, because I think that is the paradigm of women trying to fix, like my partner is the one that needs help. And you were speaking to this of men doing that as well. So again, it's if you're a woman watching this and you know that you would benefit and can drop in and work on your own triggers and stuff here, that's amazing resource as well. So thank you so much, Nic, for being on today. It was really fun to have you and to get to
Thank you
share
for
your
having
work.
me.
Yeah.